So as you feel like you've found your place, supporting your body in a way that works for you today, and taking the time, realizing, as if for the first time, we're realizing that what's here and now, my life, the reality of here and now, this activity of my mind and body is actually what's most relevant. And of course, what we recognize, hopefully, is that so many of the habits of our mind take us away into our thoughts about this and that, future, past, our likes and our dislikes. But so many of the mental patterns, mental habits, what we call distraction, take the mind away from the present moment. So especially at the beginning of a sitting meditation time, I know it may sound funny to say it this way, but those first couple minutes of your meditation, you really want to feel it, see it as a devotional activity, like you're coming back to your dear teacher, your actual experience in the present moment. Yes, you might have forgotten about your teacher for a long time. People in the hall are laughing because a phone just said, I don't understand. It's bringing the Zoom community in on the joke. But I say that because there can be especially after a while, practicing for a while, we can become a little bit cynical or disheartened about all this talk about the present moment. What's the big deal about the present moment? I've got bills to pay. I've got this or that to figure out in my life. But from the Buddha's own practice and from our own practice, we slowly, gradually begin to understand that the real problem is we don't have a relationship, a clear and honest relationship with reality, because we're in our thoughts about things, in our interpretations. We actually haven't emphasized the skill, the capacity we all have to be present. And being present doesn't mean that cognitively I understand what's going on in the moment. What it means is that the heart and mind is open, sensitive, willing to feel what's moving in the mind and body, but not dependent on its interpretation, on the mind's interpretation. More interested in that direct and immediate connecting, opening, allowing. And the most important thing I think I can say about this path of awakening taught by the Buddha is that all the learning, all the deepening of insight, the deepening of understanding, and the development of wisdom and compassion, all of that depends on developing a relationship with what's here and now. And any moment of your life will do. You don't need a different moment to practice opening to or connecting with or being aware of. This moment is fine. This is our teacher in this moment. There is no other teacher than this activity of the mind and body right now. And I think it's true that eventually you'll start to feel a real respect, even a devotional sense of this coming back from distraction to being present, from thinking that we know to knowing that we don't know. And we're okay because we have this other practice, which is to be opening directly to the nature of the activity of the body and mind. And in this practice, in this path, subtle is significant, right? And being superficial, being caught in our thoughts about things is dangerous in the sense that we keep repeating our patterns that lead to stress, to greed, to hatred, to fear, to alienation and disconnection. So we transform those habits by cultivating this devotional, deeply rooted valuing of the present moment reality of the body and mind. Here and now, the way it is, here and now, opening. So it's a real receptive move on our part. Is it okay now to feel what's here to feel without having to interpret or figure it out, but valuing the openness itself, the sensitivity, the curiosity, the humility. We really understand what patience is all about. It's not a tight stance being patient. And what's going to happen then in that practice of being open, being present, the nature of our body and mind, the nature of our life is going to reveal how it is that things like the heart gets all bound up, stressed out, and how it is that the heart becomes released and free. But it's not about you or me figuring that out. It's all about this valuing of being present, which also means being humble and open and willing to feel. And this is the practice, keeping the present moment in mind. It's a practice of not forgetting that it's like this now. It's not some kind of control, like I'm gonna make something happen. We're learning and developing a very specific spiritual muscle, which is this valuing of present moment awareness. And it's more about recognizing awareness than it is about you or me doing awareness. We don't do it. We recognize this capacity, this capability of being present. Oh, this is being known. This is being felt. And so when we use a technique like mindfulness of breathing or mindfulness of the body sitting or mindfulness of hearing, these are just skillful means to help us keep remembering the present moment, to not fall in our habits of forgetting. So let's continue in silence now for the rest of our set, 20 minutes or so. Just do the best you can. Begin over and over. Each time you notice the mind's distracted, come back to the body. Come back to feeling the breath naturally moving in the body. And realize this awareness of the body, this awareness of breathing is happening here and now in the present moment. And rediscover that receptive capacity we all have. And then learn how to sustain present moment awareness. And begin again and again each time you lose it. Sensing the totality of the present moment, not just the object of experience that's in the forefront. So much of the practice initially is just learning, figuring out what it means to be present. But it's not something you figure out intellectually by thinking about it. It's more of a direct experimentation of opening until you learn like how to open to the way it is, or how to be aware, mindfully aware. It doesn't have an agenda. It's really receptive. You're not trying to make something happen or get somewhere. And eventually it dawns on the mind, oh, this is what it means to be present, to be mindfully aware. And then you learn the next lesson really is learning how to sustain present moment awareness. So we have a few minutes left, just doing the best you can to be interested in the present moment. Even if your mind is rebelling, it's possible to be aware. Oh, it's like this. Reactivity feels like this, looks like this. It's just this mental bodily activity being known. So take a moment, adjust your body as you need to. Great to see everybody here in the room and all of you online. And especially those of you in the room having to navigate the Twin Cities Marathon traffic. Glad you made it. And also we have our parents and kids here today. So if you don't know, parents, that we have a group that meets at 12:30, basically right after this program, that meets, I think, once a month. So feel free to join in for that or ask some questions, maybe at the end of the program if you're interested in getting support about how to bring these teachings and practices into our experience as being parents. So I've been talking about this chapter from Ajahn Chah's teachings, and it's really about the Four Noble Truths and the path in a traditional sense. And so much of what we call the Buddha's teachings, it really is about this path. I mean, the Buddha didn't give us an answer. He described a lifestyle, really. You could call it a lifestyle of wisdom and awareness. And as a way of resolving what's heavy in our hearts, what's anxious in our hearts, what's uneasy in our hearts. And he often would say, Ehi pasiko, you have to check this out. It's not enough for me to tell you this. You got to check it out so you know for yourselves why this path makes sense. And you might have noticed the beautiful wood carving on the sign out front and the emblem we've used, common ground is used for many years now, basically from the beginning. And it even relates to the name common ground. But from right at the beginning of, 2,600 years ago, one of the ways the teachings and the people who practice these teachings is represented is the footprints of the Buddha, walking in the footsteps of the Buddha, right? So the idea is somebody's done this, you could do this too. That's the idea. There's a path. Check it out. See if it's onward leading to your well-being and the well-being of others, those around you, if it's helpful. And if it is, stay on the path, right? That's the basic idea. So if you haven't seen it, Cecilia Schiller, a wonderful woodcarver in town. Actually, she lives out of town now, but did the altar in the corner and did our sign and did the altar behind me too. But check out the nice, beautiful, and the way it's the traditional representation is you have two footprints, that kind of 2 feet, and then a lotus in the middle, a lotus flower, like someone. So the idea is like, I am so grateful there's a path. So it's not so much, we think about the Buddha a lot, right? But the reason we think about the Buddha is because there's a path, right? He represents this guy who lived 2,600 years ago, is sort of a symbol for us even today that there's something to do with our life besides just trying to save for retirement or resolve this tension in my relationship or figure out what car to buy or, all these things that we have to navigate in life. But there's something else we can do in the context of doing all that other stuff because that doesn't go away, raising kids or falling in love, falling out of love. That stuff is still going to happen, but now we have a context like, yeah, I'm engaging my life, I'm embodying my life in order to understand how it is that this existential, heavy, anxious feeling arises and how it is that it can really cease. And it's kind of a provocative promise from the Buddha, that there is an end to suffering. So again, the Four Noble Truths, it's just a map, right, of the path. There is suffering, right? Not everything is suffering, but there is this uneasiness. Even when things are going well, there's an uneasiness. Like, how long will these good circumstances last for me? And there's a reason the heart's uneasy. That's the second noble truth, to get interested, like how it is that this uneasy feeling, this heavy feeling, or whatever, however you might describe it, how is it that it comes to be? It doesn't land from outer space. There's something in the way I'm understanding and relating feeds or supports this uneasy feeling I have. Sometimes stronger, clearer, sometimes we're distracted, right? So we have sort of this sense, oh no, life is fine. But it may be that we're just not awake to what's underneath that surface of like everything's good right now. And sometimes we're really holding to everything's good right now because we don't want to integrate the wider truth. Yeah, it's good right now, but I can't count on it. I don't know how long it will last. There's birth and death. Did I forget? Right? Let alone all the other uncertainties in life, vulnerabilities. It just comes naturally, unavoidably with being a human being. That stuff, the vulnerability and uncertainty doesn't go away when we're having a nice moment. It's still a nice moment. We're not denying like when things are nice that it isn't nice. It's just in the context of undeniable uncertainty and vulnerability. There is this truth of suffering or uneasiness. It has a cause. There is a cessation, that's the third noble truth, and there is a path. So that I kind of talked about this a few weeks ago, or last week, I guess, last Sunday. And then I want to go into a little bit more detail about how the Buddha talks about the path. But I just thought I'd share this. I don't think I did last week. This is Sylvia Borstein, a wonderful teacher from the West Coast, one of the founding teachers of Spirit Rock, which is sort of one of our grandmother institutions north of San Francisco, place that Shelley has taught and I have taught a few times. Many of our community members have gone out there for retreats. So this is just her sort of more casual way of talking about the Four Noble Truths. Life is challenging for everyone. Our physical bodies, our relationships, all of our life circumstances are fragile, subject to change. We are always accommodating. Right? Even when things are good, we're sort of like strategically like, how can I make it last a little longer? Or how can I stay a little bit unaware that it's going to end? Because that's going to ruin my nice moment, knowing that it ends. Right? You're having a nice meal with a friend you haven't seen in a while. It's just so great to be spending time with them. And then, you just happen to glance at your clock or whatever, and you realize, oh, I got to leave in 10 minutes. Does that, but we could have, right from the beginning, always knew that this nice time is fragile. Instead of all of a sudden having it ruined by remembering that it's fragile, that it's going to end. And the same thing, if your intimate relationship with your partner, if you have one, or deep relationship with your four-legged pet or whatever, if it's humming along and really wholesome and really kind of a joyful and beautiful relationship, like just experiment with, hey, this is so great, and I can't hold on to this. I can't make it last. And it's just this great relationship we're having is infused with uncertainty and vulnerability. It's just how it is. I can pretend it isn't true, but that actually brings in more anxiety than a kind of more honest integration of the truth. And then Sylvia writes, the cause of suffering is the mind's struggle in response to challenge. So this is just something to reflect on. This is like her version of there's a cause. Like whenever our heart gets tight or bound up or heavy, there's a cause. And the cause is where? Always. It's the only place anything ever is, which is where? Here and now. Right? Now this is where we lie to ourselves. Because when I'm heavy, when my mind or heart is tight, I think, well, the cause is because this person said something to me 2 hours ago or something, or this person didn't do what they said they were going to do, and now I'm tight. Or the world is the way that it is, and now I'm tight. But really, the reason we're tight is something that's happening right now. Now, I know you don't have to, it isn't helpful actually to believe that, but you want to check it out. Where is actually the cause for whatever you experience as your heart, mind, body getting tight, bound up, heavy, anxious? Right? This is a cause, right? I mean, an insight. That seeing the cause immediately, directly as it's happening in the moment is an insight. It changes our life, seeing this. And then she interprets the third noble truth as the end of suffering, a non-struggling, peaceful mind is a possibility. And no, what she didn't add there, regardless of the conditions or the circumstances. So again, I'm just going to add that piece. The end of suffering, right? The end of that existential uneasiness is a possibility. This non-struggling, peaceful mind, it's a possibility no matter what's going on in the world, in our lives. Right? Now, again, it doesn't actually help to believe that, but Is that true? Like to get curious about that. Can this heart, can, a, can it meet the moment, any moment, in a non-struggling, peaceful, released way? Or is that just not something that happens? Because that's actually, I think I can say with confidence, even if we're not aware, but that's actually what we want. Like we might think, I want to have this circumstance so then I can be happy. But what we really want is that happiness of release. And we just think, I need that circumstance in order to be released. So actually, what we want is not to have that perfect house wherever we think that perfect house would be, or that perfect relationship, or that perfect body, or health, or that perfect wealth, or the world being perfect in the way we think it should be perfect. What we really want is our heart, and then by extension, everybody's heart, to be free of that grip, the grip of fear, the grip of anxiety, the grip of loneliness, the grip of longing, wanting, needing, right? Now, not later, no matter the conditions, unconditional release. That's what we want. And that's the third noble truth, right? That this is possible. And the Buddha would say, I think, is be aware if you have some kind of arrogant, no, that's not possible. Because then you lose your curiosity. And where do we look for that release of the third noble truth? The same place where we realize, oh, there is suffering, and we realize, oh, there's a cause. Like there's something about the way the mind is relating here and now in the present moment that is causing things to be bound up. That's exactly the place we realize, the mind can realize the release, the letting go of whatever that cause was. And then having some insight with those first three reveals the fourth, like clarifies the fourth noble truth. And again, it's just a map of the spiritual life, the Four Noble Truths, not something to believe in, which is, I mentioned there is a path to be developed. And Sylvia's interpretation is the program, Eightfold Path, for ending suffering is wise understanding, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. So this is the traditional, right? There's a program. But to walk this path, to engage this path, we need some intuition, some respect from our own experience. Oh my God, there is suffering, right? Like little insights, like it's relevant that my heart is tight, that my heart is heavy, that my heart is uneasy. And it's especially relevant when I recognize that the cause is related to how the mind is understanding and relating right now, in the moment. And when the mind isn't relating that way, there is a release of what I experience as suffering. As we have some insight, some understanding of that, then how to live our life, like the path, what to do with our life starts to get clear. But it's nice to have the pointing out from the Buddha, right, about these 8 limbs, they say. I'm going to talk about it mostly in a 3 aspects of the Eightfold Path. But you see, this is another symbol you see quite a bit. One of the very earliest, there's sort of 3 very early ways the teachings and practices were symbolized. And you might think one of them is the statue, but actually that came a little bit later with, if you remember your history, when Alexander the Great, rather, invaded all of that, all the way to northern India. And as you might remember, the Greeks were into statues. And so the existing culture, Buddhist culture, and probably Hindu culture too, in that area of northern India, to compete with the sort of Greek influence, started to represent their spiritual life with the statues. And you'll even look, some of the statues, because by then Buddhism had spread quite a bit, like up into Afghanistan and other places a little bit more west, I guess. Um, but some of the early statues of the Buddha actually look like Greek figures. It's like mimicking the dominant military, oppressive, probably uh, colonizing force of the Greeks. But there are three early ones. I mentioned one already, just the footprints. And then another was just an empty seat, like a black cushion. Not, this is more from the Japanese tradition, but just like a place someone would meditate, but nobody on it, which is sort of a provocative image for like a spiritual representation of the path. And then the third is the eight-spoked wheel. You probably have seen that. It's a very traditional, it's just a circle but eight spokes representing this, what I'm about to talk about, the Eightfold Path. And the way the Buddha described this is sort of nice, because he didn't invent the path, right? It's just nature. He's articulating very deep human common sense. Like what does a human mind understand when it really pays attention to one's subjective experience? And he describes it, in this metaphorical way. It's just as if a person traveling along a wilderness track, right? So maybe you've been on the Superior hiking trail or in the West, on some Appalachian trail on the East Coast or whatever, and sometimes you're just sort of finding your way. It hasn't been maintained well, or maybe not a lot of people have walked on it. It's just as if a person traveling along on a wilderness track were to see an ancient path, an ancient road traveled by people of former times. They would follow it. Following it, they would see an ancient city, an ancient capital, inhabited by people of former times, complete with parks, groves, and ponds, walled and delightful. In the same way, he's talking about his own practice before he became a teacher. In the same way, I saw an ancient path, an ancient road traveled by awakened ones of former times. And what is that ancient path? Just this noble eightfold path. Wise view, wise resolve, or sometimes translated as wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, wise mindfulness, wise concentration. Following it, I came to direct knowledge of fabrications, direct knowledge of how they arise, how they cease, direct knowledge of the path. Right? So how the mind constructs, how the mind has sense contact, how feeling arises, how craving arises, how suffering, he says, the whole mass of suffering, how it arises, how it ceases, and the path that leads to that cessation. Right? That's the path that he discovered. And then he goes on and he talks about, my role as a teacher is to talk about that path so it becomes usable. It's sort of, and that's actually what happened. When you think about how these teachings spread pretty much everywhere, there are not too many places on the planet that have been untouched by the Buddhist teachings at this point. And, there are different flowerings where the culture kind of really integrated and adopted the teachings and then fading like things do, things come and go. And now here in the West, maybe a little flowering of these teachings as they spread, right? It's pretty new phenomena. But it's really this articulation of this ancient, or you could say systemic. It's not like anybody created this path. And you'll see this when I talk a little bit. I'll just take the rest of our time to talk about the Eightfold Path. So, and it's really what we're doing is we're using a very particular capacity of our heart, this mindful awareness, or it's really, I like more and more to say wisdom and awareness, because there's a sense, there's no awareness that's useful if it isn't somehow integrated with some understanding, some wisdom. I mean, even to have the inclination to be present, to be mindfully aware, involves wisdom. Like, why would we do that if we didn't have some sense that the present moment in this immediate sense is relevant, useful or onward leading, as we say, leading to more freedom in our lives? We wouldn't. We'd turn the radio on or, check our social media or whatever. And we'd get lost in that. We wouldn't be mindfully aware of that. We'd find something to absorb into instead of, and it's not that we can't be present in those other activities. It's just that we're generally not, right? We're lost in them. And we're using them in order to be lost. It's not just that we're distracted, but we're, in a sense, addicted to being distracted. That's the real problem. So the first part, the wisdom part of the path is what we're doing is we're purifying with wisdom and awareness the most subtle aspect of who or what we are. So who and what we are isn't so much a human being, it's this pattern that exists in our mind, different for each of us, but there's some similarities, right? And the pattern is how the mind has been conditioned to frame the present moment or to understand the present moment. It's not a given, this sort of sense. And then you can just check with yourself, as I am right now with myself, right? Like as I'm, self-aware of me sitting up here and talking, and maybe you're self-aware of being where you are listening, and we're aware, and we realize that in the self-awareness, there is just this very deep, mostly unnoticed habit of sensing the me here and everything else out there. Right? That dualistic, I'm back here somewhere, and the experience I'm experiencing is out there. So that's like that. And we think that's like part of that delusion is to presume that that's actually how it is in an unquestioned way. Like we're not curious about that because we just think there really is me here and there is what I might call nature or the world out there. And we never think twice about it, right? But that's just a habit of how the mind understands or frames experience. And that leads to how we perceive and how we act in the world. But it's just a habit. And it's an unquestioned and an unobserved habit. We don't get interested in it. And this is the level of wisdom, is to kind of get interested in one's understanding. But obviously, it's very subtle. And what the Buddha, like the first thing, even before we get to that level, is just in that observation, is like, do we see the conditional nature of experience, even from a self-centered point of view? So even before sort of seeing that duality that's getting projected out in everything we see and do, we could just see from the self-centered place that things seem to be lawful or conditional. Because we have these other beliefs that like, oh, this is just happening to me or it's accidental, our understanding of fate. But to understand, no, everything happens because of causes and conditions. And it really changes us. And the thing is, this is a relatively easy step in terms of transforming this level of the mind, is just to pay attention to the lawfulness. So like if something really good happens to you, to really just have that sense that, well, given everything in play, it couldn't be any other way. It's like you bought a lottery ticket, something, and you win. Oh my God. And you might want to sort of, oh, God is blessing me, or something like that, or whatever you might think about it. But somebody's got to win, right? Just the same thing like you get cancer and you think, well, why me? And then you realize, you read under Wikipedia, well, you know, 125 people out of 100,000 get this cancer, or whatever the statistic is. Well, somebody has to be those 125 people. Why would I presume that I'm not included in that distribution? Right. So this is this is this insight, like the purification of our understanding. The first step is to realize that absolutely everything in this world that we normally refer to as my life, the way it is lawful, is conditional. It's not the same. It can be misunderstood as like, oh, you deserve what you're getting. No, no, no. Like if there's a tsunami and it, sweeps into the coastal areas and causes massive death and destruction, it's not about, it just means that we're living on a planet, where the plates shift. And when they shift, the ocean rocks. And when that ocean rocks, there's a reverberation called, these tidal waves. And when they hit the coast, they do what tidal waves do when they hit the coast. And when we live on a planet with shifting plates, tectonic plates, then we get this. Just like, in the Midwest, when we live in a planet like this, there will be rainstorms and tornadoes and 30 degrees below weather and uncomfortable humidity and pleasant mornings in the fall like we have today. This is how it is. Oh yeah, there's aging, there's birth, aging, and death. This is how it is. It isn't like personal. Good things happen, bad things happen, there's joy, there's sorrow, there's gain and loss, there are insults and there's praise. Everyone's different, our lived experience, but we basically are being bumped around by the positive and the negative, right? And there's no guarantees to what's next. We know we're going to die, we don't know when, we don't know how, but it's conditional, it's lawful. So when good stuff happens, when ordinary stuff happens, when bad stuff happens, then notice if your mind frames it, oh yeah, this is how it is. Given everything that's in motion, internally, externally, it can't really, this moment can't be different. Like even like all of us gathered here on Zoom, those of you at home here in the meditation hall at Common Ground City Center in Minneapolis, it might seem like, oh, but no, given your interest, given your intentions, given all of the community intentions that made this place happen since we bought it in 2006, given that Buddha gave those teachings way back at when, and every generation passed them along in the ways that they did, it can't help but this talk beamed through the technology to the Zoom community, here in the room. This is how it is. And it's a lawful arising. And given that kind of amazing complexity of causes and conditions, it couldn't be otherwise than the way it is. Now, how does that shift how we live in life when we realize it's a big shift? Because we have a lot of magical thinking about why things are happening to us. Either we think we have some kind of belief that it's all random, or some kind of belief that there's some divine force that's punishing the bad people or no, it's just all of these forces, including the forces within our own mind. So I'm not saying that we understand all the different forces that are part of the lawful unfolding. So this is how we purify our view. We're bringing interest and awareness to how we frame. So when you see yourself using magical thinking, then just kind of notice that. And then remember, like the Buddha talks about wise understanding, starting with understanding cause and effect, seeing everything in terms of cause and effect, or it's more nuanced than that. So we usually use the word conditionality, this interdependent cause and effect or conditionality. Oh yeah, can't be otherwise. And then that matures into this sort of realizing that there's even something more subtle going on, this sort of separating oneself apart from nature. There's me observing nature out there. That itself is not really the way it is. That's a habit. And when that resolves, when that habit passes away, then the mind awakens more clearly to the way it is. So that's the first part of the path. And then it naturally leads to what right thinking or wise thinking. It's sort of the most, it's the next step. Like when there's wise view, then the mind naturally, like how it thinks, how it resolves, the intentions or motivations are towards letting go, renunciation, generosity, towards kindness, towards compassion, non-harming, not towards harming, not towards ill will, not towards stinginess, right? Because it doesn't, because just even on that level of cause and effect, those attitudes of ill will and harming others, being cruel or being stingy, it doesn't actually take care of me. We see that, like, oh, that's not the way. Just observing cause and effect. When I'm stingy, when I justify ill will, when I justify harming other people, I actually get tighter. So morality in the sense is really just arises in Buddhist sense, morality, taking care of each other and harmonizing together, the golden rule, that's a natural arising by just understanding cause and effect, like what actually leads to my well-being. We'll become an ethical or moral being if we observe cause and effect. Like when you think about people who are really being destructive or mean or evil, whatever that might mean to you, do you think they're feeling good? No, no, none of us would want to be those people. Some of us are those people in moments for sure, right? And what if we're sensitive, we realize, I don't want to be this person because the pain of that guilt or that remorse is really intense. I want to live in a way where there isn't that. And that leads us to the second part of the path. The Buddhist path always begins with wisdom. It's a wisdom path. And it starts with understanding cause and effect. And we notice how it changes our motivations for how we act in the world, how we earn our living, how we speak. And that's the next part. Those three steps are the next part of the Eightfold Path. And it's called Sila, usually translated as ethical conduct. But it's really understanding that however my mind has been conditioned to act in the world, the habits that I have, I can see those habits to take what I want, to manipulate someone in order to have sex or to hate to get even with somebody, to use my speech in a particular way. That, like speech as a weapon. Um, but I can also see that impulse and refrain from it. We have that capacity, don't we? And it's actually a superpower, the power to refrain. Just because it's an impulse in my heart in a given moment to act out doesn't mean I have to act out. Imagine if we did act out every impulse we had, right? The world would be even worse than it is. So we want to recognize that, and that's sila. We're using that wisdom and awareness now at this more gross level of our life, the relational level of our life, and we're observing action, we're observing our speech, and we're observing how we're making our way in life, the livelihood. But it's not, some of you aren't working, but one way or another, we're in the circle of generosity, dana. We talk about that a lot at the center because the center operates on that principle of dana, of receiving freely and giving freely. But it's not something we made up. It's always that way. Even if you're kind of hardcore business type, and trying to extract as much, use your relative leverage in your business position to get as much back as you can, right? Which is just the basic way capitalism works, supply and demand. So I'm not making it evil. I don't mean to be making it evil or bad. It's just how our system, works. But we can see that as a circle of giving and receiving. I'm providing this and I'm receiving that. you're coming to common ground, you're receiving these teachings and whatever else you get here, and you're giving back your goodwill, or you're contributing, or you're volunteering, or however. But one way or another, it's a circle, or you're supporting giving back in another place in your life. But we want to see everything in that circle. That's how we harmonize. And if we're not harmonizing in that way, because we're already embedded, there's no way not to be embedded. Even if you're some hermit in a cave, you've still got that circle going in terms of the dates you take off of the palm tree, and the roots you pull out from the earth to eat, right? And the water you drink, right? There's giving and receiving every breath, you know, that just came from the trees and the other organisms that have provide the oxygen. And then when I give back the carbon dioxide, that supports the trees. And it's just so many endless circles going on. That's just how it is. But we're forgetful of that, right? We have this sort of dog eat dog, I can somehow isolate myself. And we forget that we're just part of this network of these dana networks of circles of giving and receiving. And the generosity is just being conscious of that. And it's a humbling thing because it strips away this thought of being independent and I deserve what I have because I did it all. That's just it's delusion. It's not seeing the bigger picture, the wider picture. And this leads to the second part of the path: wise action, wise speech, wise livelihood. And it's just all that it matters. I mean, the way is we purify those relational parts of our lives by bringing awareness there. Wisdom and awareness. We pay attention and we notice, is there the tightness of stinginess or the tightness of ill will? The tightness of, harming and justifying it? Or is it the release of those three bad or unwholesome intentions? And then the last part of the path, three more parts. So there's wise understanding and the intentions that flow from wise understanding. Those are the first two. That's the wisdom section. And then the ethical section is wise action, wise speech, wise livelihood. That we call sila. And it's like bringing awareness and purifying our relational world, not by control, but by just observing with awareness. Because we'll feel what works, what's onward leading to release and what's onward leading to being tight. And then the last part of the Eightfold Path has to do with taking responsibility for the mind. Now, here the mind on a more gross level, because understanding the first part, the wisdom part, is also about the mind, but it's the more subtle part of the mind. Now we're just talking about the normal level of like what's going on in the mind, thoughts, emotions, and how do we bring awareness to mental activity and begin to observe what mental activity is skillful, onward leading to release, and what mental activities are unskillful and leading to stress. I mean, we don't think that way. We think like, well, this is just how my mind is. But it's not a set thing, the mind. So we can bring awareness. We can be interested out of compassion for ourselves. How's the mind doing? What's happening in the mind? What's the mind aware of? How's it relating? Right? And so these three parts, wise effort, wise mindfulness, wise concentration, or wise, you could call this unification. But it's really about like, just like someone would observe their garden and go, oh yeah, those weeds need to be plucked. I think the garden has too much water, I need to bring in more drainage, or not enough water, I need to water it, right? We observe the quality of the mind, the qualities and activities of the mind in the same way. How can I, out of compassion, as a practitioner, support the arising of more wholesome qualities, like the stability of present moment awareness? And how can I, as a practitioner, allow for the abandoning and the preventing of unwholesome qualities coming back? Why wouldn't we want to do this for ourselves? Of course we do, right? every mind, this kind of ordinary level of the mind, needs caretaking. So imagine like we wake up every morning, and I'll just end with this thought, and really an encouragement for you. Every morning when we wake up, wouldn't it be wonderful if our first thought was, okay, there's my life here. It has kind of three frequencies. The grosser frequency is, I've got all these sort of relational things going on. I'm earning a livelihood. I have relationships with other people. I'm going to talk. I'm going to act in the world. I really want to bring this powerful instrument of wisdom and awareness. I want to be present so I can navigate that grosser part of my life in a way that's onward leading to release and not onward leading to anxiety and tension. And then we go, and I've got this sort of more subtle part of my life, which is this mind here. So even if I get my outer world harmonized, I still can have a crazy obsessive mind. So I also want to bring this wisdom and awareness and observe the mind and to notice what mental activities are onward leading to release and what are onward leading to stress. And then there's this most subtle part of who I am or what this is, which we call view or understanding, the wisdom piece. I want to even bring wisdom and awareness to like, how's the mind framing experience right now in a self-centered way, which leads to stress, or the absence of self-centeredness, which leads to release. It's not, we can't control any of this, but we can observe it. And in observing it, our life gravitates towards release. That's the key. Not to think you're going to get there yourself. It doesn't work that way. You just want to be interested, because interest, being, stabilizing present moment awareness, will naturally lead to the release. So thanks for listening. The kids are here. They're going to sing a song. So maybe someone can open the door and invite them in. And while they're getting settled, I want to say to the people on Zoom,